All right, I show it is 10:45, so we're going to go ahead and get started here on Friday morning, out of the ordinary with lead. But with our board meeting yesterday, we believe it was very important to get in front of you as soon as we possibly could. Our agenda is really going to be a run through of what occurred yesterday and other items that we continue to hear from our ADs across the state and information that you need. Again, in working this past week, countless thank yous to our liaisons, return to participation, over 9 hours of work to get to where we did yesterday was imperative. Also, a big thank you to our board for the work that they continue to do and the work that they did yesterday in really defining how we're moving forward. I think one of the things when we're working publicly and we're working live with as many as we possibly can, we can always work on communication. And I'm going to turn it over to Eric at this time to address that. Eric?
Thanks, Bob, and good morning, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me all right. It is interesting as we work our way through the pandemic and continue to encounter lots of changes, and timing is always critical. I think one thing we want to just focus on and let you know that our group of ADs is our primary constituency in terms of communication. We want to make sure that, one, we get the information to you in the best amount of time possible, but it's also critical that we get it to you in an accurate way. And so there's lots of communication that comes out from a variety of sources over the course of time. But one of the major factors I think that people, I think we know, but we don't realize how that impacts what happens. And as a public entity, we are subject to the open meeting law. And that does not just mean our board meeting, but that means our committee meetings and our task forces and things like that. And so when we are working in real time, very different than government agencies or some other groups, they can have all of their planning and work meetings done ahead of time, and they can prepare their information, and then they can come out and they can roll it out as they choose to and give that out. While we have the great opportunity to work with our member schools, which we think makes for better answers and for better products as we get through this, but people are watching the process in real time. And then add to that the fact that our board meetings happen with 300 people on the call. And so as soon as a decision is made, or even when people think that a decision is going to be made, that information is getting shared out. So we're going to continue to do our very best to meet your needs with the information that we have as quick as possible. Know that there could be information that's coming out that may be true or maybe not even be 100% accurate a few hours before you see the real documents. And we're going to continue to do our best with that. I know that there were drafts that were out. Lead liaisons had a chance to see some drafts. Obviously, our RTP task force was working with those drafts on a regular basis. And so I think there's some other entities as well that have increased interest in what's out there. Our superintendents have made it really clear with me that they want to be included on information. So the same information that goes to our ADs also goes to superintendents, usually within 15 minutes of one another, to make sure that schools have those in real time. And also recognize that the news media cycle that follows the work that we do. We impact students across the state, programs across the state, and without question, news media wants to follow. And there's always a race to see who has information first and to try to have it out before everybody else. So keep in mind, our priority is going to continue to be this group. It's why we work with people and communicate with them. And we're going to do our best as we go forward with that. Bob, anything you would add?
No, I think when it's accurate, when it's finalized, we're going to get it to you as soon as possible. If it gets to others before you, that's where we need to take responsibility. That frustrates us as well, and we're going to continue to work on that because you need to be the first to have what has been approved accurate information, as Eric said. So no, I think well said and stated, and we'll continue to work on that, Eric. Let's move on to really what occurred yesterday in the updates, Eric.
Yeah, obviously the return to participation recommendations was a key point there, but some other actions that take place that are important. Winter sports guidance has been out for a couple of weeks now. It is likely to be reviewed again as we go forward, but anytime action is taken by our staff or even by some of our committees, it does require formal board approval. So that winter sports guidance and information that is attached to each one of our sports and activities was approved by our board yesterday. In exciting news, the board did approve the holding of state tournaments for debate and for one act, and both of those would be in a virtual format. We'll wait and see where we are in regards to one act in terms of whether or not they're able to do full ensembles on stage and video that and submit, or if they have to do it more like we're doing today in a virtual or a Zoom type platform and video that kind of a process. But debate has been competing virtually, and it's been going really well. So we believe that that's going to be a great way to start our state tournaments and get those started again. 9-man football, competitive section numbers. The key piece there is that because of the timing of when we do competitive section placement and when we do the district football, it's going to be important that we use grades 8 through 11, because those are the grades that are going to be in the high school the following fall when they actually begin competing. That number used to be grades 7 through 10, and so it just adjusted. And again, if you are paying close attention, it used to be that district football was 1 year offset from competitive section. So that is why that adjustment was made. But in general, it doesn't change our practice at all, just moves a grade level. Updated some speech rules and policies. In fact, quite a few of them, lots of hours went into that, but we think the product is much better, and no major rule changes were included in that. The board did call for the creation of a financial advisory committee. When we have study committees that are created, there's been some questions about how are those formed. Those are called by the board, and those are appointed by the board president. And so there will be more information on how that group will be, individuals will be selected, and or how we could get some applications for that kind of a position. But that is an advisory committee that's designed to be in existence for 18 months to assist us as we complete our way through the pandemic and move forward into the next couple of years. So looking forward to working with that group, and that again is advisory, not a decision-making group. And our rep assembly meeting that took place on November 17th was much more successful in operation than I could have hoped, with great dialogue and caucus groups and things like that, and with the confidence of how that went. We did set the date for the upcoming rep assembly here, May 11th. And so that is a traditional time frame for our rep assembly meetings. There are a couple of things that will be circulating through your regions. One is unified basketball put on by Unified Sports. They're hoping to have that adopted by the State High School League. And the other is girls wrestling. And so again, those go through the process as any amendment to our bylaws would, and that goes out to regions. If it is approved by 9 or more of the 16 regions, then it does land on the agenda for the rep assembly in May. One thing of note, boys volleyball was approved to go to rep assembly last year, and that was requested to be tabled until this coming spring. So that will be on the rep assembly meeting for May 11th. Our board is going to continue to meet monthly. Every other month will be a workshop, and then every other month is going to be a meeting. So our next work with the board is going to be Wednesday, January 6th. However, when or if needs arise, we do have an executive committee that's highly engaged and highly involved. If there are decisions that need to be made, they are more than ready to come together and address the situations that might be there. So a good board meeting yesterday. Many thanks to all who prepared and helped that happen. And a special thanks to our board for their continued commitment and involvement in everything that we're doing. Bob, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, and just to echo, Eric, great job by those of you that serve on our rep assembly, and President Novak out of New York Mills did a wonderful job of facilitating that meeting. So congratulations on getting that done. And there will be a lot that will happen between now and what we believe is January 6th. So thank you, as Eric said, to our board to continue to meet as often as they do. We're going to head into really the information that you're probably most interested to hear this morning on the models that were created. Walking back a little bit through where we've been, right? That historical perspective, we shared this with our board yesterday, especially with new board members. We had one that was it was our first board meeting officially yesterday, and to bring all of our board again back to where we've been. And most of us would like to forget where we've been when we think back to late last winter and into the spring. But let's not forget what we've learned, right? And the progress that we've made with that. Really what occurred in the spring and then delaying that summer waiver period of time. I think one of the things that return participation did really well, and member schools understand under where we were this fall, right? That's 70% of contests. We've held pretty true to that. And you're going to continue to see that in the next rendition of return to participation. So we shared this again, a historical perspective of where we've been. And we can move on to the next slide really of guiding principles. And again, this hasn't changed since return participation has started. And that's fantastic that the group put in guiding principles that are pretty static, although, you know, equity and fairness and others, right? Really, we've been tried and tested on this. as schools will be coming back and starting at different times already, coming out of this pause would be an example of what does that mean? Is equity and fairness, does it have to mean equal? So the group continues to look at these principles and modifies and adjusts if we have to. On to the next slide. Really, parameters came into place the last 9 hours that return to participation worked. The start date of where we will begin is going to be determined by the state. That is one thing that we have to be loud and clear on, is that we don't have a whole lot of control on that first marker, that first goalpost, right? That will be determined, but we are going to hopefully have more control on the markers that occur after that. We know there's going to be interruptions and disruptions that continue to occur in your schools and with our teams and in our seasons. One of the things that we've said is that required days of practice, right? That 2 weeks by law will be honored. If we are able to start on that December 21st date, remember we would not start until after January 4th with contests. Yet you actually by bylaw could begin on that Thursday, which would have been New Year's Eve. But we're going to honor that period of time prior to a season to make sure our student athletes are physically ready to compete. We feel very strongly that Sundays continue to be out of play by bylaw, and we're going to protect options for postseason, right? So when we see these models and you see a green or gray box following section play, that's that progression that Eric often talks about, right? There is something that will be planned following that section play, and we're going to keep that space for us and for Minnesota State High School League member schools and our programming. Yet when we look at these models, if everything is to finish at once, what does that mean? A staggered finish, we are going to probably have a firm start for all activities, but that staggered finish is a place where we need flexibility moving forward with the models that you will see. And then that traditional number of spring contests, right? We're going to honor that, respect that, knowing what they lost last year. So that is, it is a parameter. It is really a value statement to protect that spring season that we didn't get last year. And then you'll notice where we're going to end. Again, that week of the 29th in March or the week of April 5th for that spring season is going to be a marker that you will see. And we've heard loud and clear that going beyond Saturday, June 19th is not something that schools want when we look forward at our most current models that are in place. And we can move forward here to the next slide. Then there were considerations. One of the things that feels a little bit different, but we continue to hear, is that the number of contests is primary, right? That the length of the season is secondary. You'll notice that in the models. That's with the weeks that we currently have. We have, I believe, 24 weeks between January 4th and June 19th to fit in everything that we have planned, right? Again, 24 weeks, and typically I believe that's 31 weeks. So that number of contests is primary as long as we have that length of season and the number of weeks, but we're going to try and preserve that 70% to the best of our ability with the time that we have. We continue to talk about the overlap, the sharing of student athletes between seasons, but really from that health and safety filter and that perspective as well, that we have to worry about facilities and overlapping students and that controlled environment pods, so on and so forth. And then our reality is that section tournaments may need to look different, right? They may need to be in less time, a shorter period of time. That's a reality moving forward in our models. And then really, what does postseason look like, and what is certain sports value? Is that individual tournament doable? Is it something that we can or cannot do versus that team format? And we need time to continue to look at that, and that's the role of our staff as well as return to participation. I'm going to pause there for a minute. Laura or Eric, anything I missed on the parameters or the considerations?
I think it's a really good overview. It's a lot of information. Our return to participation did a great job of keeping these in mind as they went through all of the models, and you're going to see some of those things. And again, just recognize that the models are examples of when we could be able to start, and that is going to be defined by groups other than us, and we're going to be ready to go when that time frame does come into play.
Great, thank you, Eric. We moved into markers, I believe, is next. Is that correct? And really, again, can't say enough. We're going to begin when something is different other than Executive Order 2099, right? With competitions not beginning before January 4th, and I don't think it hurts to repeat that. These are markers or dates that you can utilize working forward. And again, benchmarks or goalposts, or however you want to identify it, is we're going to try and be as close to completed with our spring season around the week of March 29th. You'll notice a green box in our markers where we may need flexibility into the week of April 5th. But once we get outside, that's preserved for our spring sports. And when we talk about spring, it's going to conclude on that week of June 14th. I stated June 19th. I believe that is that Saturday date where we will wrap up in spring sports. And then what you're going to see in the next slide here is the board saw something a little bit different. In a summary, you will have as well that the information you have is broken down, but it is all on one of those forms for you. And it looks a lot like this next slide. And moving into the next slide, one of the things we continue to hear, although we give great credit to return to participation as well, we have to give credit to the really return to participation in the chair, and Jill Johnson just continues to get great feedback on the work that she did and really how she presented to our board yesterday as a chair. Jill's work's not done yet. Return to participation's work is not done yet, but Jill did a wonderful job in leading this. I think this was an effective document to really break down where we've been, right? Traditionally, that regular season length. And then there's much discussion, right, around models 1, 2, and 3. What that just shows is weeks, all right? So it doesn't mean we can only start on the 21st. It doesn't mean we can only start on January 1st or January 18th. That just shows you examples of where we're at in terms of weeks. So could we start on January 11th? Absolutely, we could. Could we start on January 6th? Absolutely, we could. What we did yesterday is we confirmed that we have a model or a framework that's in place that the board recognizes and values that moving forward, when we can start, this is how we're going to begin the winter season and work into that spring season. Again, when we talk about contests on the right, you're going to note that the regular number of contests that we typically have there, and then trying to preserve that 70% of our contests next to that, so you have a comparable version of what that season really looks like. Note that adapted floor hockey is a practice season only, and wrestling's a little bit different, as most of us know, with that dates versus contest piece as well, where it's different in this by season. When you look at the bottom there and under contest, note that what we've typically had for contests is what we are going to seek to preserve again for our spring sports. So note that. Anything on this form here that I missed, Laura or Eric?
I think you're good, Bob. Well explained.
Okay. If not, let's move into those actual models and before we do so, let's talk a little bit about postseason. And the filters on the left, there, upper left, as I look at it, everything we talk about with postseason, really evolves and revolves around health, safety, finance, right? We're going to have something following postseason that is affordable, that we can work within, yet provide that experience in the space that is there. We need additional flexibility for staff, facilities, and much of that is noted down below. And then you also need a framework. So this is really for you as our key stakeholders and our activities administrators, that you need to know that what weeks you can and cannot schedule regular season contests into. That's really important. The next step, again, we need to figure out what that start date is going to be for our winter season. We need time to work on facilities, right? And think about, when you look at the end of these seasons, is the facility available on the dates that we need, and what facilities do we need, right? Are we going to be in the same place as we are with 250 spectators maybe or less, or could it potentially have more? Our broadcast partners, the appetite is great for to see our student participants participate, right? Using Channel 45 when we can to get that across to our audience, as well as streaming partners as well. We need flexibility around weather. You're going to note that, and especially in Nordic skiing moving forward. And then again, that concept of individual and team. Which one can we host? Which do we want to host? And advisory needs a voice in that as well. And our formats of sections and state. Does everyone make state tournament or section tournaments? The autonomy of the regions to determine that, and the section tournaments to determine that. And how do we keep playing? Right? If we have less time and you lose and you're done, can you continue to play on the other side of a bracket? If we haven't, if not everybody is able to make a section tournament, and then state who keeps playing. I think there is conversations around what do you do with consolation? What do we do with students or with schools and teams as they're eliminated from state tournaments? Do they continue to play, or is it just a championship bracket moving forward? We need to continue to work on that. So when we look at the models should reflect our considerations, our parameters, and anything else that we need to move forward with. In Model 1, again, you need to know that what was approved is no competition will take place prior to January 4th. You'll note the number of weeks that we have right now up to those benchmarks heading into March 29th. Notice those gray boxes. Now, for those of you that schedule like you do, and for our staff, when we look at boys hockey, girls basketball, boys basketball, all at the same finish line, that's where these green boxes come into play, where we need more flexibility. Doesn't mean maybe we don't do sections still in a week or a week and a half, but we may need room up front in order to do so. So if I am you as an activities director, I'm not scheduling regular season contests in those green boxes prior to that section time. If we can free up that time later as we get closer and understand the start date, we may be able to do that. But for now, I would not consider that as one of your last 2 weeks in scheduling contests. And then on the back end of that green box, under those sports that I mentioned there, right where Laura's at right now, I believe, we need flexibility again on what follows postseason, and can we offer that event at the end that looks more like what we've done in the past, maybe as a state tournament. It has been reported. We need that flexibility. A couple other green boxes up above that you'll note. Dance. We may need to extend that season out a bit in dance, and I think that's something that they would like to do if possible. If there is that flexibility, they're going to need 2 weeks to do their section tournaments with judges, facilities, so on and so forth. And then Nordic skiing on the front end, you'll notice that green box. That's really weather related, and making sure that we have weather that's conducive to get into postseason around Nordic ski for sure, not using artificial snow if we don't have to or rely on that. Again, if you go back, could we go back to that grid just again quickly on slide 10 there, Laura? In all these models, although the weeks may differ, notice that 70% of contests that we're trying to preserve, right? It's going to be a little bit easier to do so in Model 1, even in Model 2. It's far more difficult in Model 3, although it is doable. Thank you. Let's go on to slide 13 or Model 2, I believe it is. And now notice in the week of January 4th, we're really starting those practices. But if we are starting here, remember that one of the things that we're doing in that 2 weeks, you can typically play on that second Thursday of that second week. Note the weeks. Now the weeks are a little bit different as it shows within the grid as well. Really the green and the blue and that gray box, which is that event following sections, hopefully for something that looks more like a state tournament type of event. Nothing really changes there. It's just the weeks that become more and more condensed. Nothing changes down below with the spring season as well in these models, you'll notice. And so what we did in spring, just to note, as well as there's a week taken off of spring on the front end. And again, people will tell us that once we get outside in that spring season, not to have too much overlap, not to break that controlled environment, that's okay. But let's leave those spring contests alone, and let's hope we're outside utilizing wonderful weather. You know, Eric visualizes that April day when it's 60 or 70, and how we long for that. So that's our best. That's our best option, we hope, as we head into the spring. Laura, Eric, anything I missed on models 1 or 2 here?
A quick clarification on spring. You see those traditional starts there. They've been moved a number of different weeks forward. The only sports, 4 of them have had 1 week removed: baseball, softball, track and field, and adapted softball. And that was around the idea of preserving the number of contests and not touching that, but again, trying to get those to fit. And again, as Bob said, this looks exactly the same in each of the models. So once you've studied spring, you don't need to look closely at that on each model.
Thanks, Lauren. I think one of the assumptions that we're making too, and you can head into Model 3, again, really difficult to now preserve that 70% of contests in this model. Yet one of the things that we believe is the case, right, in the last 2 weeks, that you will have that ability to have 3 contests. Again, the recommendation is you're not going back-to-back dates. But if we have to make up those interrupted or disrupted dates, that those 3 contests in the last 2 weeks is something we will continue to utilize in the 3 models once we are able to begin into our winter season. Note the weeks here, right, and how compact that period of time is. Can you still do so in that 70%? You can. That total number of contests, but those last couple weeks are going to be heavy in contests, right? And this is less ideal. Again, this is not choosing whether or not we want to start on January 18th. This is just more what the season would look like if we had to start on January 18th in model number 3. Again, we could have 15 models or 30 models or 12 models, right? We have a framework in place that we're ready to begin once we're given the green light to be able to do so, once Executive Order 2099 looks different. Again, I'm going to pause there. Laura, Eric, anything here as we really shift gears out of what the board approved yesterday in our winter season?
I think a couple of comments that I would make, Bob. And one thing that we've talked about internally is we could start on a Wednesday if a Wednesday was a day that made sense and was in alignment with what was decided at the governor's office, right? So again, the number of models could change based on the information that we get there. The second thing I think is really important is that return to participation, lead liaisons, the board itself, everyone is aware that the situations that each of our schools are in are similar yet different. And so we know that in talking with a number of schools, whether it be superintendents or whether it be ADs that we've had connection with, they may or may not be ready to start practice on December 21, and they may choose to or choose not to have that opportunity. Yet it's our goal to be ready to open it up to be able to have those local decisions. Some schools have already said no contact, nobody in the school until January 4th. And so a number of schools have desires about where that is. And again, I think what we've learned over the course of time, and Bob really focused on that earlier, of what have we learned? We've learned that it's not going to be the same school to school, yet the more flexibility, the more opportunity that we provide, the better chance that we're going to be able to get the number of games in that we would desire, or the number of contests or competitions. And so we are absolutely wise to that. I would also say that there can be some good outcomes from a pause, and that there's some value in that. And obviously the state statistics require that decision be made. We need to be ready to start. We will not know far in advance of when we're going to come out of this. We may know it 2 hours before we can tell you, but it's not going to be days and weeks and things like that. And so we know that everybody's going to want to know as quickly as possible. We're going to ask for the best information so we can be prepared. We'll be ready to share it as soon as we know it and we have permission to do that. And we're going to continue to work forward on that. What I do know is when we are ready to get back and get started, it is an obligation of all of our schools to do it as well as we possibly can. For us to be able to preserve that opportunity, we have to put the protocols in place. We have to be the best example of how to do sports in the safest possible manner for all of our students, so that all schools have the opportunity to engage in those activities and opportunities. And we can return back to many of the aspects that we've lost over the course of time, and we want to be able to return to and have be part of it. So that being competition, that being postseason, tournaments, and fans. And we know that even like our student cheering sections, we miss those dramatically over the course of the fall. We want to get back to those kinds of things as well. So I think those are all really key and important.
Good, thanks. And just to reiterate, right, like our board made a big statement yesterday, confirming what we knew, right? That they're going to trust you to be able to provide those protocols and guidelines as you so showed this last fall. So your work gets us really to the point that we're at. I would anticipate that our guidance and or protocols, even for our winter sports, will need to be updated as well as we get closer to knowing what that start date is. On to the next slide, really some questions with our remaining slides, and we're going to run a little over a half an hour here today, so I apologize, but these have been popular questions, especially for Susie and myself. You know, what do we do with the student that's going to go play somewhere else, right? And how do they maintain their eligibility? They maintain their eligibility under that first bullet there under bylaw 111 by remaining enrolled, right? If there's a transfer that takes place, leaving your school, that jeopardizes their eligibility. Their eligibility is preserved, right? If they maintain enrolled. And remember, we only currently have one winter season that is in season, and that is our in terms of sports, that is dance. The other sports technically have not begun as of yet. The other one is around a question within the executive order, and I agree with so many of you. It doesn't feel right when our families or individuals are traveling to the Dells or to Sioux Falls to wrestle, to play basketball, whatever it is that they might be doing. What can we do and what can't we do? Remember what you can govern, right? We do believe that it goes against the intent of the spirit of Executive Order 2099, and it may hurt our opportunity to begin our seasons. One of the things you can do, and this comes out of an FAQ from the Executive Order, this is cut and pasted right out of that, and that will be in the information sent out to you as well. It talks about the unnecessary, or what is deemed as unnecessary travel. One of the things you can do as a school is you can say they're recommending a self-quarantine when they come back for 14 days, not knowing what that start date is going to be at this time. If a student leaves and competes outside of the state coming back, you as a school, local controls can say, you can't participate in our programming for 14 days while you're quarantined. We want to make sure that we have a springboard for our winter sports. When they are able to begin, let's begin, right? Let's really try and minimize those interruptions and disruptions to the Minnesota State High School League season. We know that it's going to be compacted already, right, with those 24 weeks we have for the remainder of this year. So those are questions we continue to get. We track those, chart those, and we try to get those out to you in lead as well. Which moves on to our next slide as well, which feels a little more normal, right? We want to accentuate and celebrate our student athletes and the work that they continue to do. We continue to provide awards programming, and many of you have already started this with our first one. And I'm going to ask Jody to touch on the AAA award. Jody?
Thanks, Bob. Good morning, everyone. So the league is continuing to provide the opportunity to recognize both a boy and a girl from your school communities as a AAA award winner. Those nomination materials go to the region. And so you're aware the region does set the deadline for that submission. And so if you are not aware of that deadline, reach out to your region secretary to ensure that you don't miss that window. This is the only scholarship program that the league provides. It's a $4,000 scholarship for those statewide winners. There's 2 boys and 2 girls from both of the classes that will win that award, and the scholarship for $4,000. So parents are very aware of this award. So again, if you're wondering what your deadline is, reach out to the region secretary, and the nomination materials are available to you directly on that award tab that Laura has captured a screenshot of there. So with that, I'm going to turn it to Lisa to talk about the other award programs.
And thank you, Jody, and good morning to everyone as well. And I appreciate this opportunity to remind you that there's still time for you to submit nominations for the Excel Award program. And if you will recall, this program recognizes high school juniors for leadership and community service. And the nomination forms are posted on the High School League's website and Laura has identified that in a slide here. And please note that we are accepting these nominations through next Friday, December 11th. We are also providing the Spotlight on Scholarship certificates, and some of you are familiar with this award as we have received order forms for up to or very close to 3,000 certificates that my assistant Sheila Robinson will be sending out here yet today. And remember, this program is for student athletes and fine arts participants who have a B or better grade point average, and your order forms are due following each of your respective marking periods. So in previous years, we have given out or awarded, I should say, over 20,000 certificates to students throughout the state, and we want to do that again this year. So we need your help in identifying deserving student participants. And then last but not least, I also want to mention that for the second year, we are awarding young people, student leaders in your schools who are the backbones of high school athletic and fine arts activities. They are those students who are respectful, reliable, and supportive of others, our MVTs, if you will, or most valuable teammates. And again, this is an ongoing recognition program, and students who are awarded are recognized, I should say, weekly through the high school leagues social media channels. So again, go to our website under the awards tag and familiarize yourself with these award programs. And I think it would be a great opportunity for you to honor and to lift up students at a time when perhaps they need it most. Thank you.
Yeah, great, Lisa. I appreciate that so much. And again, we need to recognize our student athletes. Again, I apologize. We're over a half an hour here. I did get a private chat here. When we talk about recognition, the Minnesota State High School League lost a pillar this week in Mr. Robinson, Mr. Jim Robinson, as a state coordinator for basketball officials. We need to figure out a way to recognize him and the work. And again, as I continue to learn, not only being a gentleman, but just the breadth of the work that he's done and the pioneer that he was as a human being, we will be recognizing that at a time when I hope things look more normal, and it will do the work that he's done justice. What you can continue to hear and expect from us, John Brown brought up a really good question yesterday from New London Spicer, is can we spend time to really work on guidance and protocols, and what does it mean, and how do you practice that, and how does a triangular work? We would love to be able to do more of that and offer that if time does allow. We'll probably also do that within our liaisons. And I know many of you will meet as conferences following this meeting today or at your next conference meeting. And we recognize you'll be working on things like that. But if we can assist in those areas, we want to do so. If you haven't already received information on opt-ups, competitive section placement, district football, school information form, we get into January, that's going to really kick in. Remember, we are starting the competitive section placement process. As soon as we get those enrollments, we want to make sure that we're able to do so and move forward with those. So that's what you can expect here, as well as figuring out how do we get back to playing as soon as we possibly can and coming out from underneath Executive Order 2099. So that's what we have to look forward to. Thanks for your time here today. We wish you a great weekend, and we will see you next week on our next edition here. So again, have a great day, and thank you.